Hey guys, this is Mike from Deepwood Force of Will, coming at you with another episode of our metagame analysis videos. This one's sort of like an episode 2.5, because it's not really an episode 3 yet. This is something that just kind of popped up out of nowhere, as many of you know. This is a video on the effects of the new ban list that was created by Force of Will company, and it looks like it's going to be effective June 23rd. So about a week after this video comes up, or should be going up. But either way, let's just not waste any time, let's get right into it. So the big hits. This is the first time since Reflect and Refrain were banned from New Frontiers that we're seeing a ban list, and both of these are pretty warranted seeing what's happening now. The two bans that we have here are Laevateinn the Demon Sword and Horn of Sacred Beasts. Now Laevateinn's been something that's been requested by many people to be taken off the New Frontiers format for quite some time now. Again, it's just a very powerful card, has 5 free effects, it gives J-Ruler swiftness and enables a lot of really silly plays. So a lot of people were very upset with this card still being in the game. Force of Will team has heard our prayers and our and what we've asked for and has issued a banning of the card. So we'll see what this means in just a little bit. The other one that kind of came as a surprise to some people was Horn of Sacred Beasts. Now, Horn of Sacred Beasts has been a card that's been kind of like just a very balanced card, I'd say, for the most part throughout the formats. Of course, it's like whenever you have a bunch of stuff in your graveyard and you need to just keep going in a control game, you can just horn everything back, including itself. It recycles itself, so you just get to continue your win condition there. But certain aspects of the game made this thing a little bit too powerful, such as potential first turn kill plays, giving control a lot of bounce back, giving tempo ways to beat out control. There's just a lot of stuff that was going on with the card, and we'll see exactly what's happening here as to why it was banned. Quickly to mention, there are some hits for Wanderer, a couple Wanderer changes. Unfortunately, I'm not very well versed in Wanderer, but I do see that these 3 cards are definitely problematic. Morgiana the Wise Servant, in tandem with Reflect and other draw effects, you would just mill through your deck with her effect, sculpt your hand to exactly what it needed to be, and then you just play out from there. So definitely a very powerful card, especially for the cost and the stat line. Law of Silence saw a lot of play in Fox, just because having 2 Will open is really easy for Fox. Being able to just shut out your opponent and put big things on the board made the game very one-dimensional and didn't allow your opponent to offer much reaction. And then the last one was Pumpkin Witch, OTK Maker Supreme, definitely a card that's been pretty heinous in Force of Will's history, especially with stuff like the Adam Brawley Gwyber combos going into Pumpkin Witch, Crocoshark OTKs. Pumpkin Witch was just a very difficult card to balance, and was just a card that, in tandem with a lot of other cards, was just way too powerful, especially with the blanket effect of giving everything flying and swiftness. Now something interesting that happened here is that they also brought back 3 cards. This might be a little bit of an issue going forward. The 3 that were brought back were Seer of the Blue Moon, which of course is a card that made Crocoshark OTK a big thing, but with Pumpkin Witch gone, this card might actually be a little bit more balanced than people are thinking, so this might be a good thing to bring back right now. What may not be so good is the fact that they brought back Reflect, Child of Potential, who's time and time again shown that having 8 free effects is pretty solid. We'll see if him coming back is enough to shake up the Wanderer metagame, see what happens there, but yeah, unfortunately, Reflect is rearing his ugly head once again. And then the last one on the list is Ruler's Memoria. Ruler's Memoria is just kind of a card that was unbanned in Italy before anything else in Wanderer, and saw literally no play. The card is just kind of like, it depends on the format. It's very format dependent. It's dependent on how effective Regalia are. With the loss of Laevateinn, of course, this card definitely sees a little bit less play, and it's up to the player on how creative they want to be with the card. Most of the time, people really won't be using this in Wanderer, so this is fine to bring back. The only one I definitely see a problem with could potentially be Reflect, but we'll see if it's enough to shake up the Wanderer meta. Now on to the New Frontiers list. Again, Laevateinn and Horn were just recently banned from use in New Frontiers, so what does this mean? Well, first of all, it means that Prisia, over there on the left, no longer has a turn 2, 1-turn kill. You can no longer set up a Sacred Elf, set up a Laevateinn, and set up a Death Scythe or a Horn. Well, Horn's banned too, and just automatically win from there if your opponent can't answer it. So it gives slower decks a little bit of time to think, a little bit of time to breathe. It allows people to just kind of not get OTK'd out of nowhere, and it makes the game a little bit more interactive, because the OTK was definitely a part of the game that was a little bit tougher for especially newer players, or even some seasoned players, to really get a hold of, and having that gone means that Persia actually has to slow down a little bit, and has to focus on her ruler side a little more, surprisingly. With this in mind, Persia may become more of a tempo ruler, like an aggressive tempo ruler, if you will. And I think that's a really good change for the game. I think the Spinning Myths build is still phenomenal, Jack Giant is still great, people might start to experiment with their front side a little more and not just focus on putting 12 spaces of the deck for a guaranteed 4,000 damage. So that's a really good movement for Persia at least, and I think it's going to change up the way that she's played and make her a little bit more of a strategic ruler than just a all-out blowout if you can get the right 3 cards in your hand. It also makes Death Scythe a little bit of a worse card. Death Scythe's main purpose, of course, in the past has been make sure your opponent doesn't Laevateinn you to death. Who knew? So having Laevateinn out of the game means that Death Scythe loses a little bit of steam. We might see this come out of a few decks, we might see the resurgence of some Swiftness rulers. The only decks that really will be playing Death Scythe now are decks that have constant discard outlets such as Guinevere, and probably a little bit of Charlotte control as well, because Death Scythe's just always free advantage you can bring back to your hand. So it's an interesting little interaction, and we might see the resurgence of some natural Swiftness rulers coming back into the game. Now the last thing on here would probably be for Valentina. As an avid Valentina fan, I was a little bit upset to see Laevateinn go just because it gives discounts on the God's Arts when you flip her over. But again, it's an unhealthy card, and enabled a lot of really silly plays with Valentina, and enabled really cheap God's Arts that just should not have been able to be used. So even something as irrelevant in the current format as Valentina did need to make sure that it was in check with Laevateinn. So seeing Laevateinn go definitely makes me sad, knowing that I can't get all those free effects off constantly, but it's a very effective and important change that needed to be made for the game. Now, how does Horn affect all this? Well, the reason Horn was banned, just from what I'm seeing here, as you can see on the left and in the middle, we have Yggdrasil, Malefic Verdant Tree, which is the new green ruler from Echoes of the New World, and to the right of that, the Cheshire Cat's Assistance, which on its own would have been a fair and balanced card, and it would have been fine to use, but with the advent of zero-cost cards and the fact that you can just reload your deck with Horn of Sacred Beasts, meant that there was a first turn kill that could be done by Gil Alhamat if you opened with Cheshire Cat's Assistance and enough Regalia and other stuff to just keep going. So knowing that Cheshire Cat's Assistance was going to be a problem card with Horn of Sacred Beasts, Yggdrasil was going to be a problem with Horn of Sacred Beasts just because you could always, if it's in your graveyard, put it back into your deck and keep going. It was more fuel for the tree because instead of taking life, you mill your deck instead, and having something that constantly resets your deck and prevents you from getting milled at certain times basically gave Yggdrasil free turns to live, and that's not fun when you're trying to beat down a technically 6,000 health ruler or, opponent. So Horn of Sacred Beasts was definitely warranted for these two cards. It limited a lot of design space, and seeing the designs they were going with, at least with these two cards, definitely means that Horn needed to be answered in some way. The last thing that kind of makes sense with Horn is the fact that tempo and combo decks, such as Thief Sing over there on the right, normally used Horn as maybe a 1 or a 2 of in the deck, just to make sure that you had a really good matchup against Control. Control struggled a lot against stuff like Thief Sing just because you can't burn out an opponent who's constantly recycling their threats back into their deck. It's just a very difficult situation, so seeing this happening here means that Control is going to have a better time against tempo and combo decks, and it's definitely a healthy change for the deck, for the game at least. So seeing Horn go kind of makes me sad from time to time, just because the card by design is pretty interesting and actually was not too bad. But at the same time, seeing the fact that these cards were printed and the fact that looking at all these impacts that Horn leaving the game is going to have is definitely something that makes me excited for what freshness will come from the new format. Now, what does this all mean in general? Well, as I mentioned before, control decks are something big right now. Control decks, now that Laevateinn is gone, now that Horn is gone, people can't blow you out with Laevateinn with ruler-based strategies, so control decks have a second to think. They can get up on their feet and just keep going. With Horn being gone, Control no longer loses to combo decks, no longer loses to decks that just kind of throw a Horn into the deck for the sake of throwing the Horn into the deck to make sure that they win in the late game. We see Feetsing over on the left again, making sure that Feetsing still has the tools that she needs to still be a great ruler. But again, losing those cards didn't really affect that too much. We also see over on the four on the other side there. These are all sort of ruler side based control rulers, except the Fox, but of course the J ruler side is basically a ruler side for Fox since it can't do battle. None of these cards are really affected too harshly by the fact that Laevateinn was taken out of the game. Basically what that means is that since Laevateinn was taken out of the game, instead of having extremely J-ruler based strategies, the front side of rulers are going to be, especially ones that have effects during your player's turns, such as Mikage, Charlotte, again we see Gil here, Ninetale Fox kind of has that. There's no longer a focus on getting the biggest possible J-ruler. There's no longer like in the back of your pocket, play Laevateinn, play out a J-ruler and just hit your opponent as hard as you can. Now people have to take some time, stay on the front side, generate advantage, and then use that for the late game. So we'll see the games go a little bit further into the late game now due to the fact that the game will slow down a little bit with Laevateinn coming out. And control decks will definitely have an edge here. Losing Horn of Sacred Beast means that you really have to try to handle your resources. But aside from that, these changes are definitely going to be healthy for these rulers here, and we'll definitely see a little bit more variety now that a lot of the slower rulers, such as, of course, the first one that always comes to mind is Mikage over there. He'll have time to think, he'll have time to set up his sources, and there'll be a lot of player-player interaction instead of just, do you have the OTK? No? Okay, I guess I can play now. But then what does this all mean for the future? Because, again, next Friday, the 23rd, when the new set, Echoes of the New World drops, we'll be receiving 5 new rulers. Now, only 2 of these rulers actually have stats, so only 2 of them would have even been able to use Laevateinn at all. And of course, one of them, as we know, with the Seal was broken with Horn of Sacred Beast, just having that ability to constantly cycle back your deck. We might see a little bit of breathing room for these rulers as well, since just by their nature, they're all a little bit slow. Even Flute, being as cheap as she is, she's still more of a late game ruler, like a control ruler, since when she judgments, she puts everything back into the field. Swordsman of Fire is a mid-game tempo ruler. Seal, of course, is a control ruler. And the books are just kind of whatever you want them to be. Very flexible rulers, but again, not very fast, and taking no advantage of Laevateinn. So having Laevateinn leave at this time, and having Horn of Sacred Beast leave at this time was very important going towards Echoes of the New World, just to make sure that these rulers, of course, had a fighting chance, just to make sure that the game was settled with a little bit of balance, of course, just to make sure that mid-range tempo, that's the object of the game, that's the object of these cards, and it's really what it looks like Force of Wills is trying to push right now. So keep that in mind, enjoy your tempo decks, and with that being said, thank you all for watching again. I know this was kind of a short, last-minute video. I just wanted to make sure we got this information out. Of course, this was a huge surprise to a lot of us that Laevateinn and Horn were banned in such a short period of time, especially right before the release of Echoes. But I do think that these bans were warranted. I do think that this will be overall healthy for the game, and yeah, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. We'll see what happens come next weekend at ARG States, see what everyone brings, and I'm looking forward to it. And with that, thank you all for watching. This has been Mike from Deepwood Force of Will, and hope you guys enjoy the new format.